great, one day closer to death. So hello and welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news, views and overreactions to all things NFL. This week we're in our own West Side story with the NFC West. So we got Con here and we got Sean.
Hello.
How are we getting on, Sean? How's all down in Cork? I believe it's a big day for yourself.
Yeah. It's official launch day of the paperback version of my debut novel. It's called Evening Star, all one word, by Sean Butler. If you're into sci-fi with literary twists, a bit of characters, ordinary people in extraordinary worlds kind of thing, it might just be your jam. So paperback is out from today, which is August 5th, not to give away when we record these things. And then if you're waiting for a digital version, that's September 2nd. And then the audiobook should be out at the end of September. So yeah, if you're into that kind of thing and you want to be one of the cool early people who gets on the trend before everyone else, then check it out for sure. Yeah.
Very good. So you were coached in this by your comms specialist. Yeah, this is your. Very good. Well, I've got my copy ordered anyway. It's very good. I read a draft of a much earlier version of it, so looking forward to seeing it now. It should be good. I got it ordered express from Amazon so that it lands before I go camping next week. Because yes, this is going to be our final preseason primer on the divisions, and then we're going to be kind of going dark for about 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll be back just before week 1 to kind of give you the rundown of all that's happened and preview the games and whatnot. Not saying that the preseason doesn't matter, but it doesn't really matter. There's a few
matters to the Bengals apparently this year. But,
it does, yeah. We will be talking about that. The Bengals have decided that they're tired of slow starts, but quiet enough up here. Nothing too wild. Went up to Donegal, saw the family. They were in good form. Played a golf tournament with a friend of mine, David. Our first kind of like proper one. It was good. We didn't completely embarrass ourselves. I think we came 9th in the end, which is I think a surprise to us, if not everyone else who was there. But it was good fun. We were out in gale force winds on the bank holiday Monday, so there was a bit of a storm in Dublin. So I think that maybe kept scoring low, which is why we're in any way in the running at all. But it was good crack, and now just wrapping up a few bits, and then I'm off camping down in Wicklow next week, and then off to a friend of the pod, Richard's wedding the following weekend. So busy enough, I think, and then we're straight off to the college game after that. So we'll have to probably do a bit of reporting on that. Yeah, it appears it's not selling as well as they'd hoped it would. I think the NFL game being in town killed a little bit of that, and these are not teams that would travel as strongly. But I noticed that now there's not a lot of tickets left, but what they are doing to try and get the last ticket sold is they're now offering anyone who buys a ticket €100 Uber voucher to go alongside it, so you can get your taxis and stuff. I presume because they saw the general price of hotels in Dublin, so everyone's going to be staying in like Wicklow and Meath. But
Jesus.
But yeah, no, it's looking forward to all that. I suppose we'll crack on into the NFC West this week. First up, we'll have a look at the news. So the big story, I suppose, at the moment is the NFL is selling a lot of its major media assets, including NFL Network, Red Zone, and a number of games rights to ESPN in a multi-billion-dollar deal. So this is something that we talked about last offseason. We had kind of look, insiders. We had the inside line on this. We said we reckon this was why they were doing a retooling of the NFL Network staff and programming last year. If anyone here who listens to us probably listens to around the NFL back in the day, and now probably listens to one or two of the podcasts that it birthed, we'll say. But a lot of that was a lot of the contract negotiations and cut downs of staff and everything was with a design on an ESPN deal, and then a discussion about the NFL ownership of ESPN as well, and being able to kind of portion it out. But for us over this side of the pond, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I believe it's not going to impact the Sky Sports coverage, the Channel 5/ITV coverage as well. I think is they're actually getting a little bit more than they did beforehand. It might change the way that you'll get your streaming services. We've yet to get that confirmed yet. So I'm not sure if it's still going to be DAZN or whether because ESPN is owned by Disney at this stage, I think. So it might be that these start to
Yeah.
turn up on Disney Plus or something similar, or because I know Disney Plus package an ESPN streaming service in the US. I haven't used the one in Ireland, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so complicated. I think Disney own everything these days is
Yeah, it's a
the big
fairly
thing.
safe statement.
I mean, I think from obviously it's probably a big deal from the media perspective. It's going to shake a lot of things up. One of the NFL, I think, is getting a 10% equity in ESPN, so it's really becoming a kind of vampire squid symbiotic thing. I think they're kind of coming together. I think the big thing is ESPN are planning to launch their own streaming service, and the NFL would obviously be a big part of that.
Mm.
So it looks like that they're definitely setting up for the long haul. I mean, the biggest thing online that I've been heard is people worried about red zone ads. That if you're selling red zone to, a major corporation who have certain revenue things that they need to
Hmm.
maintain, are we still going to get 7 hours of commercial-free football? I think that is the real question that NFL
Now,
fans
Sean,
have from this.
I'm going to have to break your heart here. The tail end of last season, they introduced ads, and we have not had the word 7 hours of commercial-free football for the last
Oh
month
no.
of the NFL season last year. Because they've been sneaking in. They'd had like they didn't have ads with like Catch of the Day by Built Ford Tough and stuff were always there,
Mm.
but they actually had cut to ads in it the last time. So I think that is, and I think you're dead right. I think ESPN and Disney are not doing this to not have ad revenue coming off it.
Yeah, so well, I mean, as long as Red Zone is still enjoyable, then I suppose it doesn't matter that much
Yeah,
this side of the pond anyway.
let it hit all of my ADHD brain centers all at once. What a It's hilarious. If I ever have it on in the house, I am enraptured by it, and my wife is just developing migraines to the left of me hearing it. But yeah, that's the kind of the big NFL news at the moment. There's been a couple of signings. So the Browns have added quarterback Tyler Huntley due to a number of quarterback injuries. We talked about some of those last week, but they've now extended on. That means they currently have six quarterbacks on the roster. We talked about this last week, Sean, but like no one wants to play that opening slate of games. Like absolutely no one does. It's it's horrendous. And the Bucks have also picked up a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater to be their backup. Teddy Two Gloves is back in the league again. I guess the high school coaching thing
Yeah,
isn't been resolved. But he's dead right. They can't suspend you if you're not working for them, and he isn't working for them currently. So he's
maybe he needs to fund some legal case or something to get his high school job back or something. Yeah, the Tyler Huntley thing is ridiculous. They now have six quarterbacks and none of them are any good, which is just absolutely hilarious. If you combine them all into one quarterback, you'd have a decent quarterback. But it's he'll probably be competing, I would say, with Joe Flacco week one. But I imagine I think they're thinking about there's trade rumors now. I think the Shador Sanders media train is kind of taken off and been like, what's he gonna what's the deal? Why is he stuck in this situation? Let's get him out of here. So I don't know how real that is. I mean, the Browns just. I mean, okay, I think like four of their quarterbacks are currently injured in one form or another, so it does make a little bit of sense. But this is just. I don't think there's ever been a situation like this in the NFL where you
no.
have six active, well, okay, five active because Deshaun Watson is long-term injury, but six quarterbacks on your roster, and you expect to bring them all into week one. I can't see it. I just can't see how this is going to work.
No, it's crazy down there. The Bucks picking up Teddy Bridgewater makes sense as a backup. He's a fine backup. You wouldn't want to have to rely on him for more than maybe a game or so. But I suppose like we talked about the Bucks already last week, so we kind of yeah, it doesn't really move the needle a huge amount, but it's a decent enough choice of backup. The 49ers picked up Robbie Chosen, who some people might remember as Robbie Anderson. They are absolutely snake bit at the moment with injuries at the wide receiver position. Joanne Jennings is apparently out for a bit longer with a soft tissue injury, so they're just kind of trying to find bodies to bring in now. They do have a relatively good wide receiver core if they all happen to be healthy, and we will probably be discussing that in a little bit later. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess for them. Robbie Chosen has not really done anything for the last while. I can't imagine that's going to change. And the Commanders have signed offensive tackle Lucas Nyang to kind of, I suppose, back up really slash maybe challenge, but I'm not sure he's up to much to challenge stuff. So that's kind of they're the main signings around. Although given this time of year and camp starting and people looking around and seeing other people getting paid. We got a big chunky controversy corner full of players who want to get paid and are not being paid. The biggest one, I think, is Dallas's defensive end, Micah Parsons, has formally requested a trade from the Cowboys. Um, Jerry Jones was out in the media and essentially bad mouthing him. To be honest, he just kind of was talking away. For one, he couldn't get his name right. He called him Michael Parson, I think it was, or yeah, Michael Parson said he was a sharp cookie and good at the negotiation, but he wasn't going to give him the money he wanted. And complained about him not being on the field. Mike has responded in an extremely long online post where he talks about not feeling valued, not liking when he's out there putting his body on the line and all the other players are to be being discussed in those kind of terms. Doesn't want to be there anymore. Has formally requested a leave. Now, I don't see them being able to trade him because he's I think he's either 30 or about to hit 30. He's a really good player. They would be looking for probably a first and a third, a first and a second to shift him would be my guess, and you'd have to give him a massive contract. And I just don't see who in the league has that. So this might just be a posturing thing and trying to get it because I'm sure similar to the Browns situation with Miles Garrett. If they just add a zero to the end of the check, or they, add 2 years to the end of the proposed contract, suddenly Micah will be very happy to be talked about in those terms and to be a member of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think that a lot of teams would be interested in him, but you're right. I don't know how many teams would be able to put together a package because I imagine the Cowboys would not let him go for anything cheap because he is at his peak. He is one of the best defensive players in the game. He's a game changer. I mean, back in his first few years in the league, he was one of those rookies that was so good he was making the first team All Pro in his rookie year kind of situation. Now he hasn't quite carried that on for the 5 years he's been in the league or the 4 years he's been in the league. But I expect that this is some sort of tactic. I think he's trying to out Jerry Jones by playing the media and threatening to escalate and all these kinds of things. But honestly, I think the Cowboys can't afford to lose someone of this quality if they want to remain competitive. And as you say, I'm not entirely sure teams would be able to put together a package that would satisfy the Cowboys enough. So I would expect that this does get resolved one way or another. He might end up sitting out a week or two, as sometimes happens at the start of seasons, these kind of situations. But I can't see a situation which he moves on without a team offering the moon and the stars to the Cowboys to pick him up.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin, the Washington wide receiver, is requested a trade as well. Now, this one very much feels like a contract negotiation problem. He's been in talks with them about getting a new contract. The problem is just the timing he had. So he was under contract. I think he signed, was it last year or the year beforehand? So last year would have been the time to kind of get that solidified, new leadership coming in, new coaches, and get it locked in. But now it's a year later. He's a year older. He's about to hit 30, or is 30 actually. I think he is. And he wants to be paid more than he currently is. Yeah, he's 29 now. He turns 30 like on the second week of this season. Um, Essentially, he's looking around the league, seeing what everyone else is getting paid. He thinks he's being underpaid. He is for the quality of wide receiver. He is. I think where the disagreement is coming is where he sees himself in the market versus where Washington see him in the market. I think Washington would look at was it Cortland Sutton's deal there, 4 years, 92 million, and I think they'd look at that and they'd say, yeah, look, that's kind of what we'd be looking at. Whereas I think he'd be looking a little bit higher. I think he'd be looking more in the 4 years, 120 million range. But yeah, I think that's really where the breakdown is between the two of them, because similar to what we said there about Dallas, I can't see a scenario where Washington having all the success they found last year, and McLaurin being a huge part of that. If you remember how many of the targets went his way, how much of that yardage went to McLaurin, they don't have the depth at that position. They kind of need that number one guy. McLaren is that. He's maybe not top five guy in the league, but he's definitely a top 15 guy in the league, I think. And they just need to get this done. You can't go into the season without it. But if this doesn't work out, I was thinking, Sean, the most logical place in my head for him to land would be New England because they have a young quarterback who they want to put weapons around. They think they've got him. They've invested in the line. They need, they have the draft capital and they have the cap space for it. And they do have a bit of a history of kind of taking established wide receivers who are maybe kind of pushing towards the later years of their careers and making the most of them. That one would just make the most sense to me. But what do you think?
I mean, it would be very exciting, and I would love to see that because the one thing that maybe Drake May in New England needs is a proper WR1 that isn't someone as dodgy as Stephon Diggs to rely on, or as uninspiring as a Kendrick Bourne or whatever. So I would love it, but I think probably Washington would be a fool not to find a way to make a deal. I mean, the issue is basically I think as you say, I think he signed quite recently. He signed basically the WR1 of a kind of a low-ranking team trying to make their way up, and now he finds himself as a WR1 of a team that made the NFC Championship game, and now he wants that kind of money, and he's seeing how people, yeah, I mean, admittedly, younger players like Garrett Wilson getting thrown whatever 35 billion a year in their face or more, and he's like, I want to get paid. If you want me to help this, if you want, I mean, and we talked about this in the NFC East. Pod about the Commanders is that they're trying to build a base. They suddenly found themselves with a franchise quarterback and a team that works, and they've accelerated 3 or 4 years in their development process. So now they're like, this year is about trying to consolidate that so they have a base that they can actually build future deep runs in the playoffs off. And you can't do that if your WR1 is like Debo Samuel, right, or Noah Brown. You absolutely have to have someone of Terry McLaurin's quality. And if they don't sign him, they're probably just going to have to go in the market to try and find someone of his quality to replace him, or take a gamble on someone who perhaps isn't worth it. So it's definitely one of the situations that Washington are not going to do any better than Terry McLaurin, and whereas McLaurin could probably get some very sweet deals if they start sniffing around and looking what teams might trade for him. But yeah, I think the Commanders would be idiots not to lock this down given the place that they are in their development.
Yeah, so McLaren is making he's got a hit of 25 million this year, but he's only getting about 19 million because some of that was a signing bonus, and he has no more years left on his contract, which is why he wants to lock it down. 'Cause he turns 30, he kind of wants them to give him 3 years, 4 years of runway, and they'll get outs. It'll only be maybe 2 years fully guaranteed or whatever. But I think he wants runway rather than he doesn't want to kind of have to take a 2 year deal now and then have to try and find something when he's 32, 33 and very much on the downside of the career. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes. Buffalo's running back James Cook is sitting out in practice. He's doing a hold in, so similar. He wants to get paid. They are not moving on this. They are not going to pay him, I don't think. I am enjoying his beast mode style approach to dealing with this. So he came in. He's worked at the camp for a week or two to show that he's healthy and nothing is wrong. And now he is holding in. And at his media availability, he turned to only using the word business in response to literally every single question. That said, "Well, how did you find it out there today? Business. How's the contract negotiation going? Business." And just refusing to say anything else but business to them. More power to him. I think he's a good player. I think he deserves more money than he's getting currently. However, I don't see the Buffalo Bills moving on this. I think they like the depth they have behind him. I don't think they're eyeing him up to kind of keep him longer term. I think they're planning to kind of chew up and move through running backs rather than build around Cook as a key piece, particularly his third down usage being a problem for them, which he said he's been working on. But yeah, like this is one that I think will keep going, but will eventually just end up with Cook playing on his current contract.
Yeah, I mean, running backs just don't get paid in this league anymore. Is the basic long and short of it. And I mean, Cook. The problem is the window is quite short for most running backs, unless you've got Derrick Henry longevity. I mean, he's had 2 really good years. You can't really expect a top line running back to maybe have more than two, three, four or more of those years before his career is basically over. So he's trying to cash in, and as you say, the Bills maybe they have enough other options that they don't need to press it. I think the current rumors are that they might be approaching a deal. Yeah, it's a much different situation than say a wide receiver one requesting a trade or sitting out whatever than a running back. It's just the positions are just valued so differently because of how quickly these players drop off, how quickly they get injured, and how replaceable they are for the standard that they provide. It just seems to be that running backs are just in the current era just are not that valuable to NFL franchises to be able to get away with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and obviously this is his last year, so look, he'll earn a decent whack this year. I think he'll get about 5.5 million or so, which is more than he's made in the NFL to date, which is kind of a bit scary when you look at like how underpaid these guys must be. But yeah, his concern is obviously if he plays on this contract and gets injured, then he's kind of done. So he wants a little bit more stability down the line. So you might see something where they kind of come to a compromise where they add some years to it, but they give themselves outs. That might be the kind of the compromise they get to. And finally, Miami wide receiver Tyreek Hill is not holding out. He's at camp, and boy, is he excited about camp. He was at a presser and was asked about what they should do in short yardage, and he said, "Well, we should take Achan out." And explained like, Achan thinks he's a power back. He's not a power back. This is why we have power backs on the roster, which actually quite a valid point. I agree with him, but it was picked up in the media and kind of people are going, "Oh, he's throwing shade at guys." You're like, "No, no, he's just answering a pretty decent answer to a question." But the bit that has been funny is he's been talking up the new wide receivers coach, how he's helping him understand the offense. That he did not understand this offense for the last number of years, but now he does, and also that he is now taking notes. So up to this point, he has never apparently taken notes, which I just cannot believe to be true. But yeah,
Is he literally just I run fast and you throw the ball to me?
yeah,
And that's his entire understanding of the
and
game.
that's the thing, because the thing that confused me about it is that one of the defining features when he was in Kansas City anyway was he'd get open, he'd find the space, he'd know where to run into, and he'd know where to lead a quarterback, which would suggest an understanding of the throwing lanes, the progressions, like an actual understanding of how the offense was meshing together. And he says, "I've never had that since I've been here in Miami." I just don't get it. Which I will say was only superseded by Mike McDaniel's on the podium the other day. My favorite quote so far of this offseason. He said, "How are we all doing? Great. One day closer to death." Uh, Phenomenal.
Things are going well in Miami.
Things are going very well in Miami. Yeah, and we have a couple of injuries just to quickly tip these off. There's a lot more, but these are just a few that we thought were a bit more high profile. Baltimore tight end Isaiah Likely has a foot fracture. He's likely out 6 to 8 weeks, so he'll probably miss the first couple of weeks of the season, but should be back then. Justin Jefferson, the Minnesota wide receiver, has a hamstring injury. He's expected to be okay for week one, but just keep an eye on it. Those kind of soft tissue ones can be annoying. That's what's happening with Juwan Jennings in San Francisco. And this one just caught my eye because I thought it was interesting. Actually, that's a bad turn of phrase. LA Chargers running back Najee Harris. We mentioned that he'd had a small Jason Pierre-Paul style incident where he had a firework go off, but it was said it was just a superficial eye injury and all was fine and everything's good. I think it's notable that that's what we were told and that's what everyone stuck to as a story. He's still not practicing. So he's at the facility, but he's just walking laps of the field. He's not competing in drills. He's not playing. So that's just one to keep an eye on, because I wonder if it's a more significant injury than they let on. Because if it was just a superficial eye injury, I cannot imagine that he would still at this stage coming into, the first week of preseason games in a scenario where he has pressure on who's going to be the lead running back and touches with the Marion Hampton, the rookie who they took in the second round, in there kind of already in an expected 50-50 split with a possible push more towards the rookie. Yeah, I would be concerned that Harris is a bit more injured than we're being told.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a month. Like, it was July 4th when this happened. And
Mm.
so it's a month. And, the thing is, when you are in a competition for a spot, especially with a young rookie who's eager to prove himself. Training camp comes a long way to deciding the kind of dynamics of that, and the coaches seeing which plays work and getting to see how things work in practice. Like if you're not in there competing for your spot, then you are very likely to find yourself on the bench or sitting out a lot of snaps when the season comes around. So it does speak a lot that he has not been willing to take the field yet, and perhaps there is more to that story than they're telling us.
Yeah, my favorite picture of it so far is I saw someone had pictures of him walking around the field in his rehab, and a bunch of people just photoshopped in a guide dog beside him. Just saying, oh, that explains it. Very good. We'll move on to our preview of the NFC West. So first up, Sean, you can tell us about the 49ers. They were 6-11 last year. Very disappointing season, we will say, for what they kind of came in with the hopes of achieving. But yeah, like so far so good. Christian McCaffery is not currently in Germany getting leg transplants.
I mean, it is the question for the 49ers in the Shanahan era is how healthy are they? How many of the stars can actually take the field? Because as we've seen, I mean, as we saw in 2023, when they can actually play their star players on a weekly basis, especially on the offensive side, they're a scarily good team. And they still have. I mean, okay, Debo has left, and, who knows how much CMC still has in the tank, but they still have a tremendous amount of offensive talent, and their biggest problem is their injury bug. And so last season was a write-off, 6 wins, memories of the COVID year for the 49ers, where they just had so many injuries that they just literally could not win any games. And now they're kind of hoping that it all comes back together and it works. And the big change, of course, on the defensive side, Robert Salah is back, the defensive guru who was a big part of the early years of the 49ers under Shanahan. Obviously had his misadventure in East Rutherford and is now right back where he belongs. And maybe he can be the solution that they've gone through a couple of DCs in the last few years and haven't quite found the right mix, so he'll be a big part of that. So let's just go through the changes first of all. Coming in, obviously, Robert Salah as the big coaching change. Also on defensive in terms of personnel, Michael Williams, the rookie, comes in. DL Alfred Collins, CJ West, the rookie. Linebacker Bryce Huff, Nick Martin, the rookie, and Luke Gifford going out. DC Nick Sorensen is gone. On the DL side, they've lost Javon Hargrave and Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Dre Greenlaw, and Lavondre Campbell, a linebacker. So some bigger names have come out on the defensive side, and the defense is going to be very interesting to see how that evolves going forward. On the defensive back, so moving into secondary, there's been that much change that we have to talk about the defensive changes in 2 separate sections. They've lost Javarius Ward, Tulano Huafanga, Isaac Yadam, Rocky Sin, Nick McLeod, and Tashawn Gibson, and have brought in not a tremendous amount of talent, I will say now, in Jason Pinnock, Ciaran Neal, Trey Brown, the rookie, Upton Stout, Richie Grant, and Marquise Single. On the offensive side, the big one, obviously, return from injury of Christian McCaffrey, return from injury of Brandon Ayuk. They've also added Jordan James, rookie running back, Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver, Jordan Watkins, rookie wide receiver, Luke Farrell, and Ross Dwelly as tight ends, who they've lost. Quite an amount of the O-line has gone. Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, John Feliciano, Charlie Heck. Deebo Samuel, as we said, has left. Jordan Mason, rookie running back. Eli Mitchell and Josh Dobbs is gone. So the big question with the 49ers is always the injury bug and how well they can do without their star players. And we've seen that this is a system, especially on the offensive side, because you've got Brock Purdy as like a game manager, and he's very good at that. And it's just the whole idea of the 49ers was surround this modest quarterback with a whole bunch of talent, and use the various kind of coaching fanciness of Kyle Shanahan, Clay Kubiak to really dial up some exciting plays to get things going. And when it worked that one year, that 2023 year, they probably should have won the Super Bowl. They probably were the best team in the league that year, and ultimately they just fell short because they ran into Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So that's the Niners at their absolute peak, and it's whether or not they can get back to it. The big questions are going to be, I mean, how quickly does Caffrey? I mean, it looks like they're managing his recovery, and they're still quite cautious about it. Similarly, Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall are not quite being given in. There's injuries, as we've talked about, to people like Juwan Jennings. Jacob Cowing has gone out as well. They've had to bring in some short-term wide receivers to slot in instead. So it's all very cautious. It's all very questionable. The big question is, I mean, what CMC turns up? If we get peak CMC, the Niners are instant contenders again. If we get a CMC that has been injury damaged, and let's be honest here, he's had quite a number of seasons ravaged by injuries. As we talked about, running backs don't last very long in this league. Injury-prone running backs last even less. It's all about speed. It's all about turn of speed. It's all about the ability to react. And if your leg and your knees and your ankles and your hamstrings aren't at 100%, it limits what you can do as a running back, no matter how talented you are, even if you are Christian McCaffrey. So the question of how good McCaffrey is going to be coming back is a big one, and then the question of who they put on the field, who is injured at any one moment in time, how does Ayuk come back, how bad is the Juwan Jennings thing, can they actually put together a comprehensive package around Brock Purdy is the question. And there's no way to really know. The Niners have a horrible history with injuries in the Shanahan era. And, I mean, often in that kind of situations, maybe there are training practices that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, or the way they run the plays are particularly intense in some way or another. But whatever it is, they put themselves in a situation where they tend to lose seasons. So it's almost impossible to say how good this team is going to be offensively, because we just literally don't know which player is going to end up on the field. And I mean, I suppose a lot of that then will depend on, can Brock Purdy be the guy, right? And we've seen Brock Purdy be the guy who led a team to the Super Bowl, who was able to, impose his will on games when they needed a quarterback to impose his will, who was able to drift off and allow the other superstar kind of skilled players to do things when needs to be done. They've given him a big extension. He's basically one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL now, face of the franchise. But I mean, last year's stats were not fantastic, I would say. I mean, less than 4,000 yards, which is kind of the standard of, this is a quite a good quarterback. Interception, tight TD interception ratio was basically about 2-1, but not that many touchdowns actually scored. He's efficient. He does seem to make good decisions. He isn't a fluke, and he isn't someone who's above his station. He knows what he is as a quarterback, and he doesn't try to push that hard. And I think they kind of seem to know what they're doing around it. So, I mean, Purdy is the kind of the perfect player for this system. The question is, which was answered, I guess, in the negative last year, is if players start to go down, can Purdy step up? Now that the money is on him and he's the face of the franchise and there's a lot of expectation on his shoulders, can he actually take the next step forward and become not just a guy who doesn't get in the way of this offense, but a guy who actively contributes to a team winning games in the way that other superstar quarterbacks do? Because I think that's the level he has to get to in order for the Niners to avoid this kind of up and down situation with that the injuries give them. So the offense is a bit of a question mark. If all comes together, they'll be an absolute force on the offensive side, but difficult to know for sure how many players they get on the field. And then the defense, right? So the defense during Salah was elite, right? It had an awful lot of very good things going for it, and they struggled a little bit with Nick Sorensen. They've struggled in the years since Salah left them. They kind of became more of a, let's just rely on the fact that we have an awful lot of defensive talent in people like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and that'll compensate for the fact that there isn't an awful lot going on schematically that excites. And I don't think that necessarily works anymore. I think that this if this offense is going to be unreliable or not as reliable as it needs to be, then Salah's magic is going to have to start to wave in. And I mean, the chat out of camp is very positive. Nick Bosa is talking up. He's saying he's very happy to have Salah back. He says it's a championship defense again. Salah has got that commanding presence. We know how charismatic Salah is. You can just tell sometimes just watching a guy on a sideline that the players believed him. And the Jets at their peak, when he had that young core of young defenders around him, you could see it was almost a cult. Like, this guy was their savior, and they were going to die for him on the field. And he does seem to be able to inspire that in players. So certainly that is doing it that's doing a lot for them. Now, the big problem, obviously, is talked about a huge amount of turnovers. As many as 6 defensive starters might end up being rookies. People like Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West. Like there's an awful lot of question marks over how much talent that they have lost and experience that they've lost on the defensive side, and their replacement with not an awful lot. So maybe this then becomes a building it over time. I can see this defense turning into something in 2 or 3 years when Salah has been able to shape it. But the questions this year are they quite good enough in terms of that? Now, Michael Williams is apparently doing quite well. Him and Bosa are pairing quite well, so that there's a lot of belief that this thing can work. But again, there are some questions there, and I'm not going to deny that this 49ers team doesn't have an awful lot of question marks around it. On the offensive side, it's do the pieces click back together? Does Brock Purdy take that next step forward? On the defensive side is, does the arrival or return of Robert Salah overcome the fact that they very clearly have lost talent and experience on that defensive side? And I think that they still have so much talent in this team that if they stay healthy, they should win their division. The question is, when they get down to the kind of nuts and bolts of the playoffs, the kind of the deep stages, and they run into someone like the Lions, or they run into someone like the Eagles, or if they make the Super Bowl and they run into someone like the Bills or the Chiefs, do they have enough on the offensive side to overcome, the 1 or 2 injuries they may pick up? And is this defense championship level? And I don't know if it necessarily is this year, at least.
Yeah. And answer your second question, absolutely not. And that's my big concern for them. I think Salah coming back is going to be a positive, but I think this is a shell of the defensive personnel that it used to be. I think like I said, Bosa's good, Fred Warner's good. Like, you need 3 rookies to to hit for this to work, because I don't massively rate Bryce Huff, so you're going to want Michael Williams to win that role. Kenneth Givens is fine, but you want Alfred Collins to step up maybe. The outside of Fred Warner, their linebacker core is terrible, like just frankly terrible. Their defensive backfield is fine, but not like overwhelming. Like Demador Lenore as your CB1 is okay. Renardo Green, not so sure about that. Like, we're going to need Salah to come in and whip something up, and I think he will. I think we saw with the Jets, he was able to maximize those personnel. When he was here previously, he was able to maximize those personnel. He's a good coach. He'll figure out what will work, but like, for years, the 49ers were a team that were able to just lean on their defense and know that, like, as long as we can put up 18 points, we're in with a shot in a lot of these games. And I don't think that's the kind of defense they have this year at all. I think they will find something. There's just, like you said, there's so many rookies there that 1 or 2 of them are going to work out. But yeah, there's just a lot of reliance on those guys to step up. And I think it might be too much, given I don't think maybe they have the elite leadership within the personnel to be able to kind of guide some of the rookies. So it's all going to be on the coaching. And Robert Salah is a great coach, but how much of his supporting staff are still available? Because presumably he lost some of them when he left the 49ers. He lost some of them when he left the Jets. He had a stop off en route as well. So, like, I don't know how good the position by position coaching is going to be able to get all these rookies up to speed. So I'd be very worried about their defense overall. On the offense, I'm a little bit I'm mixed. I'm positive, but I'm mixed. So I'm in the camp that I think CMC is going to have a big year. I think the training regime stuff that he's doing now looks good. I think the videos I've been seeing out of camp, he looks good. I'm quite happy with that. I think Brock Purdy is a decent quarterback. I think he gets slated a little bit too much. But the problem is people are comparing him to better quarterbacks. Like, he's not going to be a top 5 quarterback, full stop. That's not who he is, right? But there's nothing wrong with being the 10th best quarterback in the league, because the 10th best quarterback in the league is quite often won Super Bowls as long as you put the right people around them and so on. He's not a negative, but he's also not a massive positive to them. But I think that'll work fine. Their wide receiver core concerns me, just particularly with the injuries, because Ricky Pearsall is probably going to start the season as their WR1, just because Brandon Ayuk is injured and it doesn't look like he's going to be ready for week 1. Joanne Jennings has re-aggravated the soft tissue issue. So that means you've got Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, and like Demarcus Robinson or maybe Robbie Chosen as your pass catchers. So what I would expect to see at the start of this year, unless the wide receiver injuries kind of clear themselves up, I would expect to see maybe a lump of two running back packages coming out of them because both Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Garendo are good pass catchers. So I think you use them, they can provide a bit of support for what is very much not as good an offensive line as it used to be. Like Trent Williams is still an elite level left tackle, but everyone else outside of maybe the right guard are kind of, just bang average. So I think you bring in kind of heavy sets. I suppose they got use check as well. So you kind of have them guys in the back provide a little bit of extra blocking. But the reason I suggest CMC and Garendo is because they can catch as well, and then you kind of use that as kind of a not quite wishbony style, but like you kind of you run multiple exit routes out of things, particularly if you don't have your wide receivers at full health. But I imagine that will rectify itself over the course of the year, barring kind of major injury to a few of the guys afterwards down the line. You should see by about mid-season this being a far more effective offense, a bit more downfield. I think that could actually help them in terms of how people play against them on tape or with tape, because I think that'll be changing throughout the season. My one concern is with the injuries to the wide receivers and just how much of the guy Christian McCaffrey is when he's on the field. I would worry about them just leaning on him while they're getting over these wide receiver injuries, overloading him, and then him kind of breaking down again. So that would be my main concern stemming from the wide receiver issues. But yeah, like overall, I'm with you. I think this offense has potential. I don't think it'll be there in week one. I think it'll be there by week 6 or 7. We'll kind of have a much better handle on it. But I think it should be productive. You've got enough pass catchers. You've got enough running backs. You should have okay enough line play. And Brock Purdy is a completely serviceable quarterback, albeit probably not worth the amount of money they have to pay him. But that's just the market these days. The defense is the concern. I think they got 1 or 2 stars surrounded by a lot of also rans, and they are just hoping against hope that these rookies hit and that Salah and whatever coaching staff he's able to cobble together for that side of the ball are able to do it. But I'm bullish on them. I think it's going to work. I have them winning 12 games and going out, unfortunately, in the divisional round for them. So I think, yeah, that's where I've got them.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think they have enough talent, and I think Salah is a good enough DC that they should win 12 games around that. They should win their division. So I have them 12 and 5, third seed. And then I think in my playoff scenario, they run into the Lions in that situation. I just don't see them. I see them being the third best team in the NFC. I don't see them getting ahead of the Lions or the Eagles. So to me, divisional is as far as they can go.
Yeah, and Ronan sees them as a step below this year, going 9 and 8, good for 10th, but not making the playoffs. Next up, we have the Cardinals. I'll chat about them. 8 and 9 last year. It was a kind of a relatively forgettable season for them. We said going into the year there's some talent lacking in certain key positions, particularly on the defensive side. It was all kind of resting entirely on the offense doing explosive things, and Marvin Harrison Jr. working out. He was fine, but not all that impressive. So it just kind of mid season 8 and 9. There's been some changes, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So they obviously been listening to the podcast. They know what they need to get sorted. On the defensive line, they're doing pretty much a full turnaround. Ray Lopez, Dennis Gardeck, Kiris Tonga, Naquan Jones, and Julian Aquara are all gone from there. Bringing in on that side, they've brought in Josh Sweat, the rookie Walter Nolan, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell. Yes, he's still in the league, boys and girls, and another rookie in Jordan Birch. So they're doing a full-scale rebuild on that defensive line. At linebacker, they cleared out Kazir White, Chris Barnes, and Victor Dumyeke. They brought in the rookie Will Johnson and Denzel Burke, defensive back, and also more senior Jalen Jones coming in to help out there. That linebacker, Akeem Davis Gaither, Cody Simon, the rookie, and Michael Walker, the linebacker. On the offensive side, they lost Will Hernandez, Jackson Batten, Tristan Colin from the offensive line and Zach Pascal, their wide receivers. They brought in wide receiver Simi Fehoko, and then in the offensive line, Royce Newman, Jake Curran, the rookie Hayden Connor, and then they also brought in quarterback Jake Brisket. Jacoby Brissett is now settling in the Cardinals. I'm not sure that's the most natural fit for Kyler Murray. I believe Jake Brisket is quite tall, and also he sure as shit don't move like he used to. So I don't think he's going to be moving all that much either. The thing that's going to define this season really is going to be whether or not um, the defensive side is going to be able to get their stuff together. They are building a pretty decent looking roster on that side of the ball, particularly when you look back over the last 3 or 4 years and what that defensive side has looked like. Up front, because they run a 3-4, you got Josh Sweat, who is a solid, decent to kind of like good player, I'd say. Maybe slightly better than good, but we need to see a little bit more of him. They've added in Dalvin Tomlinson, who's serviceable, and a relatively highly touted rookie in Walter Nolan. So that should make for an interesting kind of front for them. Their next lineup, kind of the linebackers, pass rushery sections, is actually quite strong now. So they've got, David Collins, Barry Bowlin there, Darius Robinson, Calais Campbell, Cody Simon. Mac Wilson is so, but then you've also got like Akeem Davis Gatherer and Starling Thomas sitting in that. So like their second line should be very strong, which will help, particularly with Nolan, the rookie, being slated to start there at defensive line. They should be able to provide support with him over the back, allow them to do some more interesting things with him. When you've got solid like linebacker or kind of, more tweener D-line guys who can sit on the second row, that means you can kind of back up the rookie or you can kind of run interesting stunts off it. Back end, Buda Baker is still very good. Will Johnson, the rookie, is slated to be their CB1. I never love a rookie coming in and being your CB1, but when, Max Melton is the next best option, I can see why that's the case. So, Buda Baker will probably have to shade more to Max Melton's side to try and provide support there. We'll see how good Will Johnson is on his own. He could probably have Thompson or Taylor Debinson backing him up a little bit behind. But, when we compare this to previous years, this is a pretty tasty looking defense as Cardinals defenses through the years have gone. So, I don't worry too much about that. Gannon, it's been a knock on him that he's got defensive sensibilities, but it hasn't really been able to show it, that the roster needed so much turnover and all. And I think they're kind of getting there. There's still one or two spots that need strengthening, but this is a pretty good defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, the eternal question is Kyler Murray the answer? If Ronan was here, he would argue adamantly that he is not. Ronan is he's a Kyler Murray hater, right? And I get it. Kyler Murray is frustrating because it feels like he can be very good at times and very bad at times. He's very fluctuating, we will say. When a play breaks down, you don't know if it's going to be a loss of 15 yards or he's going to run around and find someone. They've got a solid run game with James Conner there. I would be concerned that he's another year older, and again, kind of comes heavily from volume rather than necessarily being the most explosive or elusive guy. And I don't like the backup in Trey Benson. I think they could do with a bit more depth there. Marvin Harrison is going to have to step up this year. Now, there was a lot of talk in the offseason about they were working out how to use him correctly and whatnot. I don't know. The problem was Harrison came out of the gate incredibly hot last year. He came out, was his second game, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams, and everyone went, oh, he's arrived, this guy's great, and then proceeded to do very little. So it was like 64 yards, 45 yards, 36 yards, no yards, 21 yards. He only had 2 games where he went over the 100-yard mark last year. They were seeming to get a bit of a better feel for it later in the season, albeit at that stage effectively a lost season, so maybe they were getting slightly more favorable looks or teams weren't as concerned. But he started to kind of be more like catching 5 of 6 targets, catching 5 of 5, things like that. He just seemed to be a little bit more consistent, so hopefully this year they're going to be able to use him a little bit more effectively. My concern is they don't have the other options at wide receiver that are going to draw defensive in. Like Michael Wilson is not a massive threat. Zay Jones has never really worked out. Greg Dortch is Greg Dortch. Trey McBride was excellent last year, albeit that he only was it one touchdown he scored. Yeah, it was only one touchdown he got last year, even though he was over 1,000 yards. He's an incredible tight end, possibly the best tight end in the league behind the Raiders chap. But I expect his touchdown numbers to rebalance. He should probably be up in the 8, 10, 12 touchdown range. So that will help them a lot if they can kind of get that happening. But I think you need another wide receiver, because if Harrison is taking the back off it a little bit, and I think he's more than that. I think that was their problem, was that they were just running a lot of goes with him, thinking, well, this works. And you're like, well, no, like he's got moves, he's got footwork, he could play a little bit more inside, give him a wider route tree. But McBride was kind of taking all that inside stuff off him, and I think Harrison was half the time just being used to draw defenses away and to give a bit of space over the middle. So I don't love the weapons they have. I think they could do with a lot more depth there. The offensive line leaves a lot to be desired for me. Paris Johnson is fine, but like their guard situation is not great. That rookie can only play one of those two positions. There's only so much they can do. If the rookie works, then that might be okay. If they put him at left guard, you have a strong enough left hand side. The center for Holt is fine, but I I'm hoping what we see is a more nuanced use of Marvin Harrison this year, because that's where the potential for this offense to go up a step is to actually scheme this guy open, use what he's got, and I think that could help them quite a bit, because if they don't have that, if they just still if they try and run the same kind of approach out, Sean, it you're going to get the same kind of result, which is you're going to be up and down in passing statistics, because either the deep ball works or it doesn't, and I think they should be doing more than that. The running game is going to get jammed up, because if they know that, well, there's only one wide receiver we have to cover deep, and then we have to put our next best corner and our safety on the tight end, like that's all going to get sucked down, and then everyone else can just kind of muscle down on a not massively elusive James Conner. Like, we need them to do more with what they have. They need more talent at that position, but they also have sufficient talent there, if schemed correctly, to be able to be a competitive team. Do I think they're a playoff contender competitive team? I don't think so. I think the defense will be good. I think that'll be an improvement, but I still think they're lacking something on offense. I think they need a WR2, and I would be looking for this team to maybe be sniffing around trade options. Like, could you imagine what this team could look like if they were to get their hands on Terry McLaurin or something like that, and you have a proper like two outside wide receivers who can play inside if needs be, and Trey McBride kind of covering, so like that's an exciting prospect. That's a team that can challenge for a division. But as it stands, we've got a misused WR1 who's entering his second season, having not, I think, been brought up to speed on a proper route tree for an NFL level wide receiver. We have a mercurial, I think is a nice way of saying wibbly wobbly quarterback. We have a run game that's aging. So yeah, we might have a good defense. I just don't think we have enough offense.
Yeah, I struggle to really get excited about the Cardinals in any kind of significant way. They're a team that has always, throughout the Kyler Murray era, shown flashes. There have been weeks, and sometimes 2 weeks in a row, where they look so amazing. You're like, they finally figured it out, that they've got it going, and then they just go into kind of a lurch and have 2 or 3 bad weeks. It's like it's a week on, week off thing. It's very difficult to see this team in any period in that, like the last 5 years, to have gone through a significant streak of just consistency, and that is ultimately what this team is missing. And a lot of that comes down to the offensive thing, is that I just don't think Kyler Murray has the discipline or the kind of the game presence to be anything other than an agent of chaos. Basically, his job is to just go out there and do things, and every once in a while those things that you do work out, and every once in a while they don't. And when they do, you win games, and when they don't, you lose games. And I don't think that is the formula for success for this team going forward. And so I don't know what the addition of all these talented pieces really do to fundamentally change the nature of the Cardinals. On the offensive side, I mean, yes, there's talent there in the There's talent definitely in the skill positions. You talk about James Conner, you talk about Trey McBride. I think Marvin Harrison should have a better year. Is he going to be stepping up to WR1 that they need? Questionable. So I think there are pieces that you can put together here, but I think Kyler is just so unreliable as a quarterback, and the line is just so goddamn awful. Even take into account Paris Johnson, the line just has significant weaknesses that are going to be a problem for them. And there's a problem with depth as well. They don't really, if they get into any kind of injury situation, the Cardinals don't have an awful lot in the tank below that. So offensively, I just don't believe that. I think we've seen enough of Kyler at this stage to know that he's not really the guy, that he's exciting, but he's not the guy you can hang a kind of a playoff caliber team or a championship contending team on, because he's just not consistent enough. And it doesn't really matter what's around you in that sense if you can't get that guy to be. Because, I mean, the thing is, he's actually in many ways worse than having a Brock Purdy. Because at least with Brock Purdy, you kind of know what you're getting week in, week out. With Kyler, you just don't. You just don't know what mood he's in on any given situation. So there's a lot of questions about that. And the questions about, will McBride continue his evolution? Will, Harrison Jr. take that step up? How much does James Conner have in the tank? All of those questions to me are secondary to the question of, can you get enough out of Kyler for this offense to really click? And I just don't think you really have it there on the offensive side, which means then the defensive side becomes quite important, as you said. And there are a number of factors to kind of think about this, right? So Jonathan Gannon, hung his hat on. He is a defensive guy. He was brought in to solve the Cardinals' defensive problems, that they just never had a defense that could match what their offense was capable of. And he was the guy who was going to do that. And yet still they were bottom 10, right? They've been a consistently bottom 10 defense since Jonathan Gannon came in. And the argument, I guess, is that they just didn't have the talent, right? I would say if you're truly good, we've seen endless examples of, if the coach is good enough, a talent-efficient defense can become average, can become competent. I just don't think we've seen that kind of competence yet to really. He gives me more Brandon Staley vibes than he gives me Brian Flores vibes, is what I'll say about Jonathan Gannon in terms of how much you would trust him as being a defensive guru, as a guy that gets things done. But obviously the Cardinals front office believes in him enough. They've kind of dumped all the free agent money into, let's give you a lot of talent here that you can actually work with. And I think that is the test, right? If Gannon has to not just produce an average defense from what they've added on in terms of people like Sweat and Campbell and the such like. He needs to produce a top 10 defense. He needs to produce a defense that is doing exciting things, that is doing interesting things, that as a defense teams don't want to play. And we just haven't seen that, right? I just haven't seen that as a thing that he has in his locker room to do that. So I just don't know what these Cardinals, what there really is to be optimistic about. Because every time I think about, well, this thing, part of it could work, I'm like, there really isn't a tremendous amount of evidence to suggest that it actually will in reality work. Like this offense could click, but is the evidence, has past years shown us the evidence that could actually be a thing? And this defense could improve remarkably because of the talent injection, but have we really seen enough from what they can do defensively on the coaching side to actually give that kind of justification? I just don't see what there is to really be excited about in this Cardinals organization, to be honest. I think they have severe talent deficiencies in certain areas, and where they do have a lot of talent, I don't necessarily think the coaching has proven themselves to be worthy of it. So to me, and they're in quite a tough division, three pretty damn good teams. They feel like the weakest team in this division, and that's a very difficult place to be in any division, but particularly one in which there's multiple playoff contenders. I just think they're going to lose a lot of games. If they were in a softer division, they probably, if they were in the NFC South, they might have a shot at winning the division. But here, I just don't think they have enough to really contend.
Yeah. Well, I have them going 7-10, which is good for 12th in the NFC.
I have them 5-12, which is probably a little bit on the harsh side. That's second worst in the NFC. They're only better than the New Orleans Saints, which is probably not tremendously fair, but that's where I ended up. So yeah.
Given the South exists, and we've got Ronan kind of is actually more bullish on them this year, 8-9, which is just staying exactly the way they were last year. So, Sean, that takes us to your next team, the Rams. They went 10-7 last year. A heartbreaking divisional loss against Philly. They had Philly on the ropes and nearly had them, but then Philly came back and jumped them. There's been a few changes. Tell us about it.
I mean, the LA Rams are a fascinating team for me because you can never write them off, right? No matter what happens, Sean McVay is just such a good coach. You just feel that he's going to get stuff out of his team. And once again, I come into the situation being like, this team is going to be pretty good, right? Now, they have an issues. Stafford has some injury concerns and an age concerns, and they're obviously a worry about how much they can actually build their offense around a quarterback that maybe is on the downslope now. And there are questions about just how much do they put too much into the offensive side of things rather than the defensive side of things, and maybe that imbalance since Aaron Donald retired hasn't quite been fixed. But this is a team that was somewhat of a surprise playoff team last year. I would expect them to be around that level again. So not a tremendous amount of changes. On personnel wise, the big one in terms of skill positions is Cooper Kupp is gone. Replaced effectively by Devontae Adams. They've also lost Marcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, and Hunter Long in the skill positions. Replaced them with tight end Terrence Ferguson, rookie, and running back Jarquez Hunter, rookie. On the offensive side, Joe Noteboom and Jonah Jackson are gone, replaced by Coleman Shelton, David Quessenberry, and DJ Humphreys. On the defensive side, Bobby Brown, Michael Hecht, Neville Gallimore, Christian Roseboom, and John Johnson have all left, replaced by Poona Ford, rookie Josiah Stewart, rookie Ty Hamilton, linebacker Nathan Landman, and the rookie Chris Paul. No relation to the basketball player, I would imagine. So the Rams, really good head coach, which creates a really interesting offensive thing that they're always going to be an offensive force. They have, if Stafford stayed healthy, they probably he's up there. He's an elite quarterback. I think we can admit that now. They have Puka Nacua as a WR1. I mean, Devontae Adams is probably not good enough or young enough to be a WR1, but he's a damn sure very useful option to have as a WR2 to really spice things up. I mean, that is a 1-2 combo you don't necessarily want to be running into if your secondary has some weaknesses. They have Kyron Williams, who's a very good running back as well. So in terms of the skill positions, the Rams are really bringing it on the offensive side. Not a tremendous amount of talent behind that. I mean, the Rams model has always been invest in stars and then just fill in the other positions around it. So on the line, maybe some weaknesses at center or whatever, but not a tremendous amount to write home about. So they're really hanging their hat on the skill players will do the skill player things, and that's been pretty standard right under McVay. Is that the offense is always the more exciting part of this unit. I believe Terrence Ferguson might be the guy to kind of take up the Cooper Kupp type role. I mean, it's kind of attacking zone defenses and such like. So it looks like there's interesting things they're trying to do. I think they've been limited in what they've been able to test out in training camp because of the trying to essentially wrapping Matt Stafford in cotton wool in order to protect him. Back soreness. They've been holding him out of early camp. Jimmy G is getting a lot of time in training camp, but you put those skill position players together, and if Stafford stays healthy, this team is going to be quite good offensive. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with that Adams Nacua thing, because I think it kind of opens up an awful lot of things. The obvious idea is that Devontae Adams replaces Cooper Kupp, but I think they slightly different skill things. I think it does kind of open up things in terms of that. Puka Nacua apparently is the guy who's dominating camp at the moment. He's not just he's commanding an awful lot of routes. People are really talking him up in camp as a guy to do it. So I think if you combine Sean McVay with a healthy Matt Stafford and McVay's kind of offensive mind with the Puka Adams double combo, and and with Kyron Williams in the backfield, that's a really difficult thing to deal with as a defense, right? So I think this team will, if they stay healthy, score an awful lot of points. So the real question then becomes, well, what do they really have on the defensive side? Because the defense has always kind of been where this Rams team has fallen down. Now they do have talent up front. Verse and Turner in particular. That front seven has quite a lot going for it. I don't necessarily think that talent extends into the secondary all that much. I mean, they but they're really building around that front seven. Chris Shula in interviews and stuff has been emphasizing that's where things are going. I mean, obviously Puna Ford kind of slots into that thing around Verse and Turner, Braden Fisk as well. So I think they're looking at like attacking the run and attacking vulnerable quarterbacks. So I think they'll be quite an aggressive defense going forward in order to maybe make up for the fact that they don't necessarily have an awful lot going on. I mean, they've multiple problems in terms of defensive back injuries, underperformances. Kobe Durant, people are talking about him not being quite good enough. So there are real weaknesses there. So for me, from the defensive side, it's going to be, can the front seven shut down the opposing offense before someone can throw long bombs over them? Like, so it's going to be very interesting to see, for example, how these guys play against the Cardinals. Because if the Cardinals are a team that's designed for explosive long ball offense, then the Rams are really set up to be uniquely vulnerable to that, right? But conversely, if the Cardinals don't have an O-line, they're going to get absolutely crushed on the line. So it's that kind of thing. It's going to be very interesting to see how this works defensively, because it feels like it's going to be chaos, right? Because of the talent differentials therein. And you kind of have to lean a little bit on Chris Shula as a very good defensive coach to maybe kind of fill in the gaps therein. So I'm always upbeat on the Rams as an organization. The one season I was kind of talked into being like, oh, the Rams aren't going to be good enough. They still ended up making the playoffs. So I'm kind of off that now. I'm kind of consistent being, as long as Sean McVay is the head coach of the Rams, I think they're a playoff team or a playoff contender team. And I think they have, if things click, maybe not this year, but in other years, if things click in terms of their personnel, they can certainly contend for championships, as they have done in the past. So for me, they will continue to be a solid playoff team. The real question is, can they, if they get into a situation against the Eagles or the Lions or even the 49ers in the playoffs, are those defensive weaknesses going to hurt them? And will they be able to scheme up defensively to cover for those deficiencies? And can they stay healthy enough, especially with Matt Stafford, to be the offensive force that we kind of think they could be if they stay healthy?
Yeah. I kind of agree with a lot of what you said there, Sean. Like, I think the offensive skill position is very strong on this team. I think Kyron Williams is a good back, albeit, maybe some concerns with injury stuff. I don't love Blake Corum as a backup, but he looked fine in spots, so I'm sure that'll work out. Puka Nakua and Devontae Adams are probably the best 1-2 or close to it at the moment that you've got, and you've got a nice mix of guys behind. So Tyler Higbee's there. The rookie Terrence Ferguson is apparently lighting it up in camp at the moment, although I think he's got a slight groin strain, but they said it's nothing serious. And you got Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, Colby Parkinson, people like that can kind of step in behind, and that's fine. The line isn't great. The center in particular is not a strong point, but like, we saw Matt Stafford getting hit a lot and getting injured a lot recently because of the deficiencies there, so that'll be a concern for me. But the main concern on the offense for me is Matt Stafford. So he's an excellent player when healthy, but like, he's not been practicing. He's had back issues, so he's not been throwing at OTAs. He's not been throwing at camp. They've been downplaying it, saying it's nothing too major. Quite often you'll get older players who won't do it. I feel bad saying that about Matt Stafford, given he's the same age as me, and I don't like the idea of being an old guy. I did get told off by or called an old person by some young ones there when I was walking the dog last week, and it cut me deep. But if Stafford's back isn't quite right, that's a concern for me on this team. Like, we saw, they kind of live and die on his arm, essentially, because they don't really have, like, what's it? Their backup is Jimmy G, I think, which is passable, but like, it's not. If you put this team with Jimmy G, you feel a bit differently, particularly with that line and how Jimmy G reacts to pressure versus with Matt Stafford, who's always been the wire standing in there taking the hit, but his body's giving up a little bit. So I would caveat it by saying very good on paper, should be good offensive line issues, but just keep a very close eye on Matt Stafford's health going into the season, and particularly behind an offensive line like that, the continued health of him through the season. On the defensive side, look, I love what they're doing up front. Jared Verse is great, Kobe Turner's great. Like, this is a nice mix of players here. They've got the rookie in there, Stewart, who's hoping to break in as well. Like, it's a nice mix there. Their back end is terrible. Like, their cornerbacks are just not up to scratch at all. They might cycle through a few more people, maybe have a look at who's getting caught or who might be able to be done for like late round swaps or something, and add some more depth to that part. And that would be a concern for me, particularly if we end up in the spot like if we look at this offense and we think this offense can play well and can play quick and can put up points, that means, play teams against them are just going to have to be throwing on them, and you kind of don't want that. Bizarrely, you probably don't want to pull too far ahead and have them throwing at you and realize that that's where the weakness lies in it. Like I just don't like their defensive back room at all, and that concerns me particularly if they were to, get to the playoffs and have to play some of the bigger teams. Even in division, there are teams here that will cause them issues if healthy. Like you said, the Cardinals, I think, would probably need another wide receiver to do it properly. But like there's challenges there that they'll face. But yeah, look, on paper, this is a pretty good team. It's got a great skill position set. I'm concerned because I've also got a bit of a feeling that this is the Matt Stafford farewell tour. I'm not sure we're going to see him next year. I know he's under contract for next year, but I'm not sure. Given all the talk in the offseason about the back injuries and the health and stuff, I think this might be the farewell tour, and I just worry when you look at that. You've got an aging quarterback with injury history. You've got an aging WR2 and Devontae Adams. I think they're going to do well. I can see it clicking. I'm not sure I see them being the team that they are building themselves to be this year, lasting for a whole 21 games or whatever it would take them to get all the way up there. So I think I'm going to have them calling just short, but being very entertaining in it. It doesn't help that they have an absolutely brutal schedule this year. Like, one of the reasons that the likes of the 49ers are in a position to win as much as we have them projected to is because they play the fourth place schedule, so they have a far easier run of it versus what the Rams are going to have to contend with this year. So I think that's going to be a problem. I think, given the quality of the teams they're going to have to be facing, that secondary in particular is a problem, and that's just going to put a cap on what they can achieve this year. Now, I still think it's going to be good. I have them going 10-7, but going by the numbers that I have from my projections, 10-7 isn't going to get them into the playoffs this year. What about yourself?
Yeah, I have them 10-7 as well, but for me, that's enough for the seven seed. And then they go out in the wild card.
Mm,
So yeah, they're a playoff team, but as you say, they're probably just not quite good enough to compete
yeah,
at the top end of the NFC at the moment.
like even if you took this roster a year ago or 2 years ago, you'd be very, very happy. But I just think there's a little bit of fragility in it. Ronan has them going 10-7 as well. That's good enough to win the division. They get the 3 seed and they go out in the divisional round per his expectations. And finally, we have the Seahawks, so I'm going to chat about them. They were 10-7 last year, and there's been a bit of a changing of the guard everywhere. Like, this is as big a 1 year swap around as you'll really see. So the offensive coordinator, so we've got offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb is gone. So too is Geno Smith, their quarterback, who they traded away, and Sam Howell, the backup. They bring in Clint Kubiak to run the offense. Sam Darnold was brought over on a decent, not as big as it would have been if he hadn't played those last 2 games contract. They bring in Jalen Milrow, the rookie, to be the backup and presumably kind of the potential heir apparent. There's been a lot of positive talk about Jalen Milrow out of camp so far, and Drew Lock is there too. But that's kind of he's just an also there kind of thing, as I imagine, kind of more of an injury protection backup. They lost DK Metcalf, who I'd say was the WR1 for a few years, but it's kind of last year started to get unseated by Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they decided they didn't want him in the locker room anymore. They traded him over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tyler Lockett is gone. I think that's going to break the hearts of Seahawk fans a lot more. He was a big fan favorite, incredibly reliable, but very much getting on in years, and had a phenomenal ability to never take a hit, which was great. He would just catch the ball and then just drop to the ground and go, "That's enough. We've got a first down. I don't need to do any more." The other thing that they had, and this has been a recurring issue, and we've spoken with Ronan about this quite a bit, is the offensive line needed quite a bit of work. So Lakin Tomlinson's gone, Stone Forsythe is gone, George Fant is gone. They also got rid of tight end Pharaoh Brown in their places. They bring in the rookie guard Zabel, who's going to play, I think, right guard. No, sorry, left guard for them, I think it is. Josh Jones as well in the offensive line. They bring in Arroyo, the rookie tight end, and Soward as well. And on the offensive side, they've brought in Cooper Cup from the in division rivals, the Rams, MVS, and Torrey Holton, the rookie. On the defensive side, they lost Draymond Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, Trey Brown, Artie Burns, Rayshon Jenkins, and Quan Wallace. They brought in Demarcus Lawrence, picked up the rookie Riley Mills for the defensive line as well. Rookie Nick Emanwari for the defensive backfield alongside veterans Anthony Bell and Shaq Griffin. So this is a very interesting setup. We've got a quarterback who was on the on the top of the recycling bin, who had his career turned around last year with the Vikings, with a lot of question marks over whether it was him or whether it was the coaching that did it, and then kind of crumbled a little bit at the tail end. And there's a lot of similarities, and you think about that story to Gino, who came in and was kind of their guy for the last couple of years, and helped soldier them through a lot of difficult seasons, a lot of turmoil. You got Clint Kubiak coming in, going to run this offense, and obviously he's been picked to be paired with Darnold. They think that's going to work quite well. I would imagine we're not expecting a very pass heavy offense here. I expect to see a lot of running. Certainly Kubiak might suggest that to you. And they have the personnel for that because Kenneth Murray is an excellent running back. Zach Charbonnet is a fantastic second option to have. I think he's shown that he's decent enough, but you wouldn't necessarily want to run him as a full-time back himself, whereas Kenneth Murray, when healthy, is great in that kind of position. Jackson Smith and Jigba has become a proper WR1. I think last year I had him on my list as the guys who are going to really step up, and he did, and I can only imagine that might continue. The only thing that might hold that back is whether or not the offensive scheme allows him to kind of flourish as much as he would otherwise, because I'm not sure they're going to be passing as much. Cooper Cup is, I'm a bit split on this pickup, so I think he is a good WR2. Better than what they would have had otherwise. I think he's probably a little bit past it, but potentially, in a new system where it's not going to be as much passing, where Jackson Smith and Jigga is going to take a fair chunk of the targets. I think it could work for them. They then have like MVS, who I think is very much over the hill. Jake Bobo, who apparently has kind of regressed a little bit, has been slipping down. They've got I think they've got five tight ends on the on the roster. So they've lost Noah Fant, he's gone off now, but they've got the rookie Arroyo. They've got Barner. They've got a few other guys as well. So it'd be interesting to have a look at their tight end spot and how that finishes out, particularly with this type of scheme that's run heavy. I find that they tend to use the tight ends a huge amount more because they'll have them in for blocking, and then whenever they're not needed for blocking, they can come free. So I would expect to see like multiple tight end sets happening. The line, which has been a problem for quite some time, is solidifying somewhat, I think. Charles Cross is going to be their tackle. Gray Zabel is almost certainly going to slot in beside him. The center worked out like fine, if not particularly overwhelming last year. The right guard spot is probably up in the air a little bit. The competition between Hayes, Bradford, and I think Josh Jones is going to take the other side unless Lucas can beat him out. But I imagine Jones will solidify that. It's not the best line, but it's a market improvement from where they were beforehand, and that's going to be needed because Sam Darnold has a history of not liking pass rushers, and I believe it was seeing ghosts was the term that was used for him beforehand. So it's an offense that I think has the personnel to set up for the type of offense that I expect Clint Kubiak to be running. I don't expect it to be the most exciting in the world, but I think it'll be quite functional. And I think what we're looking at here is a return to something that feels a little bit more like the Seahawks under early doors of previous regimes, because I think we're going to see a run heavy team that's going to try and play possession ball, occasionally take some deep shots here, and lean on their defense. Because when I look at this defense, I'm very, very excited by it, Sean. And I know on our little kind of preview spreadsheet we have a lot of we have color codings, and it doesn't look the best from the color codings, but I think this is going to come together really, really well. I think they've got good guys on the back end. You've got Julian Love there at safety. You've got Devon Witherspoon at cornerback. Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant are both quite good there. You've got the rookie Emma Mori coming in. Josh Joby's there as an extra guy. Shaq Griffin is there too. Like, you've got a really nice bunch of guys to put into rotation that can do coverage, that can come into the box and tackle. And that's the thing, they can all tackle very well, which I think is great. I think they've got a lovely mix of guys up front. Leonard Williams has been great. Demarcus Lawrence, I think, probably still has some stuff left in the tank. He's got Nwosu behind him for kind of mixing around. Murphy, Reed, Mafe, they're all in that front. Like, this is a very exciting mix of players who I think will gel very well. And I think Mike McDonald has a relatively clear idea in his head of what he's been trying to build out of this unit for the last while. I think he's gotten there. If I had an issue, I'd say maybe the linebacker core needs to shake out a little bit more. But again, we might see some of the rookies kind of step up in there as well. Like, the linebacker core could do with a bit of help, but they're not as important in this system, given that I think the front line is going to be so strong in it, and I think the addition of the likes of Lawrence is going to help that a lot. So I would be quite excited to see what this defense looks like. I think this offense will be functional, but maybe a little vanilla for us. Do we think that that will be able to garner success this year? I'm leaning towards yes myself. I think Sam Darnold will be kind of more of what we saw mid-season Sam Darnold, where it's not blowing your socks off, but it's perfectly workable. It's, 13th best quarterback, 14th best quarterback in the league. Kind of an old school Andy Dalton line style quarterback. You've got a good run game. You've got good weapons. If everyone's just coming in to eat the run game, you've got good weapons to go to. You've got an interesting collection of tight ends that can block and catch. I think it can work. And the defense, I think, is shaping up to be very, very, very tasty. And I can see this being the kind of team that tries to play possession football and win a lot of games 20 to 17, 21 to 18 kind of area. And I think they're going to find success with that, because I looked at their schedule and I said, yeah, do you know what? That kind of ball will play against a bunch of these guys. Now, yes, it requires a couple of the guys on the defense to continue to grow from where they were, but I think there's a lot of young ascending talent on that defense. I'm excited by it. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I don't think it's going to be the Legion of Boom, but I think it's kind of starting to build towards something like that. This could be a proper lockdown defense kind of thing. Maybe not the most exciting for red zone, maybe not the most exciting for a highlights package, but really good, solid football. And it'd be nice to see Seahawks back in that kind of position.
Yeah, I do have a lot of similarities to you in terms of how I see this team. I have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the defense, and I think Mike McDonald has demonstrated what he's capable of, and that he's kind of solidified himself as one of the best defensive minds in the game, and what he's been able to do with this defense last year in terms of bringing him up into the top 10 in points allowed, stuff like that. A lot of speed and discipline, and despite there being a lot of roster turnover, they managed to put together a unit that was quite good. And certainly in terms of what the camp reports you're getting, the defensive side of it is really optimistic. Like they're really talking up about how good people like Devin Witherspoon are looking in the system, Nika Amanwori, Damian Martinez. There's a lot of people that are getting a lot of praise. McDonald has nothing but good things to say about the competitive environment and stuff like that. And even pieces like Shaq Griffin and stuff are said to be good. There's some concerns about cornerback. I think Tariq Woolen and maybe the quality of the safeties is not, at least reporting says that they're maybe not as good as they need to be. So there's a lot of youth contributing. There's a lot of good defensive ideas. Certainly this team is going to be a very good defense if trends continue. And so I have no reason not to expect that they will, if they try and win games based upon their defense, they probably will get a few scalps there. My big question is I just don't love this offense. I struggle to find my way into really liking this offense. I think the Sam Darnold thing, is dicey. I mean, I think the guy has proven that he has a ceiling more than he has a floor, if you know what I'm saying. I'm like, he certainly early last year with the Vikings, he looked like he'd found his niche. But I mean, how much of that was just Justin Jefferson just doing things, right? Because he is a guy, and we saw it when we watched him live in London. He's a guy that makes mistakes. He's a guy that misreads the field. He's a guy who takes risks when he shouldn't. He throws balls he shouldn't be throwing. He gets his team in trouble. And I don't know if, even if you run a deliberately run first offense, which is clearly what the Seahawks seem to be pivoting towards, you still kind of need your quarterback to be able to do things. And I just don't know if Sam Darnold is that guy. And I feel when you've got the talent of people like Jackson Smith and Jigba and even, albeit aging, Cooper Kupp, it just feels like Sam Darnold is not the right quarterback for those kind of wide receivers. And I'm just not entirely sure how that's going to work. I mean, are we going to be seeing a lot more reliance on people like Noah Fant or the rookie Arroyo at tight end than we are going to see the explosiveness of the wide receivers? So I question on the offensive side. I mean, I obviously see a lot of talent in that running back field with Walker and Charbonnet. I mean, Clint Kubiak has been brought in deliberately to reduce the volatility, to try to create a dependable clock-managed thing, and that they're working on the scheme. But that line, if you're going to be building your offense around running game, you should not have half your line or 3/5 of your line being noticeably weak. Like the entire right side of that line is going to struggle. And if you have something that's so noticeable like that, teams are going to start targeting it. And so I don't know offensively how this team works either in a passing or in a run game sense. And you look into what's coming out of practice and the reports, and things are not looking great. McDonald has been very critical of what's been going on in practice. The run game is not being efficient. Sam Darnold is having his moments, but there's pacing issues. The wide receivers are dropping balls. That the line is not holding up as it should. I believe this defense will be strong, but I think they need to have something on the offensive side to hang around, because we've seen too many teams in the past who've had really good defenses and are able to grind teams down and to hold teams to 17, 14 points or whatever. But if your offense can't score that many points, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately you do need to have an offense that can score points. And to me, I just don't see how these things connect together. I just don't see how the line protects the run game enough for that to work, and I don't see if you can rely on Sam Darnold enough to get the most out of this explosive talent around them, because you're kind of relying essentially on Jackson Smith and Jigba to become Justin Jefferson, right? In terms of that game player thing, and that's less of what his strengths are, other than just kind of solid route running and being the right guy in the right spot. So there's just too many questions on the offensive side for me to really buy into this yet. I think they'll be very strong defensively, but I think this team is, at least in the opening weeks, going to be an absolute mess on the offensive side, and I think they're going to be dropping a lot of games early because they just simply can't score enough points.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think there'll be limitations what they'll do offensively. I think they might get into their rhythm, and particularly if some of these tight end moves work for them, I think it'll work quite nicely. But it's all about that defense, baby. It's all about that defense, and I have them riding that defense all the way to a wild card. 10-7, good for 7th in the NFC, and they take the last wild card spot. They then go out in the wild card. They can't play with the big dogs yet, but it's still a good performance.
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I have them 7-10, which is, again, maybe a tiny bit harsh, but it's a tough division, and I just don't buy that offense yet. So that's 11th best team in the NFC. But I'm very much at the bottom end of what we're offering in terms of that Seahawks.
Yeah, and Ronan's bang in the middle there, 9-8, good for 9th.
Which is probably what will actually happen, since he does know the Seahawks better than we do.
See. So. We'll see. I think that's more to do with his what's it called, the kind of the happiness risk adversity thing, where he spreads it around. So personally, he'll be rooting for that, but it means if they fall short, he'll have been right on the picks. So
which is all that really matters. Yeah.
It's yeah, as long as one of them comes through, then it's good. Very good. So any crack for the next couple of weeks then, Sean? Any big plans?
Not a huge amount. We're getting a new car, which I believe is coming next weekend.
Ooh, exciting.
Which is an automatic, so I
Mm.
don't have to think about changing gears, which is good. To prep me for the driving test, which is coming up in September.
To our American friends, the vast majority of cars up until recently have all been stick shift, as you would call them here in Ireland. The automatic thing is kind of taken hold recently, and now most new cars are coming out in automatic. So I think there'll be a shift to that in a couple of years. But yes,
Yeah, I mean, my thing is like in 10 years they'll all be automatics with the various hybrids and electrics
yeah, yeah,
anyway. So it doesn't.
yeah.
You do the test in Ireland. If you do the test in automatic, you're only licensed to drive automatics, which obviously makes a tremendous amount of sense. But I don't think that'll be too much of a hindrance for my driving
No,
going
you'll
forward.
be fine with that. Very good. Then you'll be out driving again, terrorizing the streets of Cork.
Well, my wife did make a point of buying all the various collision insurances and stuff just in case I do what I did
Solid
last time,
choice.
which is crash right into the neighbor's car. Uh,
Always a solid call. Hey, good. And then yeah, you'll be up to Dublin for the college football game in a couple of weeks as well, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that'll be good fun
yes,
now.
that's 2 weeks, I think. Roughly, yeah,
I
two and
think
a
it's
half weeks.
3 weeks away. Yeah, it's like the
Yes, something like that.
24th or something like that, is it? But no, so that should be good fun, yeah, because it's yeah the 23rd I think is the football. Um, yeah, no, similarly, I'm kind of going camping for a week down in Wicklow. Got a friend's wedding, and then we've got the college football. And as the encroaching middle ages continues, I'll be out golfing as much as I can in the nice weather, and pretending that it's real exercise. It's the only way to do it. But that'll wraps up for now. It'll be a couple of weeks before we're back to you. We're gonna kind of come in the week of week one. We'll catch up on all the news, all the movements, all the bits. We'll do a little kind of preseason catch up on where we've maybe changed our opinions the most or whatever, and we'll preview all the games. But until then, and for the next couple of weeks, it's bye from myself. It's bye from Sean.
All right.
This is All Four Quarters. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you when football season starts.